problems we're looking to solve. One of them is being able to get out of the planning phase, be able to get to the point where we can actually start constructing things that we can show the customers. One of the benefits of having a long planning phase, or a side effect, is that it gives us a chance to get our logical database figured out, allows us to get our hardware in order to be able to get our development environment set up, which takes quite a bit of time. So if we're in a agile mode, I don't quite get how do we have time to, if it's a new project, a new application, how do we have time to get our database set up and our environment set up in a month or a couple of months? How's that work?
That is quite a bit of a challenge. We wrestled with that quite a bit on our project. The first sort of answer to that is the iteration 0 is what we were calling it, where we spent a lot of extra time up front talking about how this thing could look and behave and what the data model might look like. The other answer to the question is we would have a sprint later on in the process where we would go back and try to make things right. I can't remember what that sprint is actually called. Is it the spike? Yes. Okay. So that's how we did it. Architectural spike, right?
So we do it nationwide. We do have pre-planning that happens, right? We still got to get permission for the budget. We still got to get permission to determine what the scope is and scope down what you're doing from a project perspective. There is some activities to make sure environments are set, stuff like that. But one of the things that I think I heard was that you spend a lot of time determining the data model up front. My question would be, the data model needs to be incremental too. It needs to be built in a fashion just like the rest of the code. You have to be able to refactor it going forward. You don't want to commit early on to a data model that may need to be changed in iteration 3. So you don't want to spend too much time working on stuff that may change in 4 or 5 iterations. So you got to figure out how to balance the pre-planning efforts versus the efforts of discovery within your iteration. Because that's really the power. Being able to refactor and discover after every iteration is going to literally change all of your it could change your entire architecture, your entire design that you spent months agreeing to and getting sign-off on before you ever started your iterations. And I think you've got to learn to balance that. It's very difficult for new teams to figure that out because they want to spend a lot of time to get 15 people to sign off on a design, when in reality, that design will probably change by the time you get to the last iteration anyway. So I would say get high level. We do what we call high level design, which is very 90,000 foot. Get everybody on the same page and then work through spikes, architectural spikes or design on the fly. Simple evolutionary design.
Sort of a guiding rule is that write down what you know with architecture, but when you start making stuff up, stop. At that point, start working through the details an iteration at a time. As you learn more things, you can add what you know to your architecture. So we're not saying that don't think about it at all. Certainly capture what is understood, but at some point when you're making stuff up, you got to realize you're just going to do it over again. So work through it an increment at a time.
My question is about the temptation to take parts of waterfall and try to integrate agile into it. A lot of companies have matured in the waterfall methodology fairly recently and are not willing to let go of that. So for some of the more mature practitioners out there, how did you do that? And how did you resist the temptation? Did you give in? Or did you say, here are projects that meet this criteria, so we will go agile with them? How was that phase?
I mean, it was pretty easy for us because, waterfall just was failing. So it was pretty much the argument of what is there in waterfall that was meaningful for us to bring with us, and it's the education, I guess, for lack of a better word, that I had to do was that it's not that we aren't doing the same things in Scrum that we do in waterfall. It's just we're doing them either daily or in that sprint, in that time box. And maybe we're doing them in different orders. The order's not as important. The activities are still taking place. It's just very focused on what you're doing. We're just, kind of a cliche, but we stopped lying to ourselves that what we were doing in waterfall was really giving us confidence and letting us succeed, because it wasn't. So we were just telling ourselves smaller lies every day and validating them. So it wasn't really a question of, for us, of what could we bring from Agile into Waterfall, or what could we let go of. It just was kind of a non-issue.
So to your question, we were Waterfall as well, and myself and my team were all very experienced project managers in traditional Waterfall delivery. So temptation is great to fall back on what you know. And one of the ways we got past that, or continue, so first of all, it's like an addiction, right? If you're ingrained in Waterfall and you've practiced it for years, it's like any addiction, right? You're always going to have some tendencies, I think, to go back to some of the things you know have worked in the past. And those aren't necessarily bad unless they go against some of your principles with Scrum or with Agile, and that is one of the biggest ones I found. One of the biggest hurdles was the self-organizing teams and the servant leadership that's required. So a lot of project managers are very used to and comfortable with walking over to someone's desk and beating them up when they missed a due date, or management coming and poking their nose in and getting on people for not delivering, or questioning them intensely about a plan, or even seeing a project plan. But I think part of the resolution to that is continual reinforcement by the management team, the leadership, the Scrum Master, the project managers, working together to support each other, to call each other out when we see each other slip back into these old habits, and realize that if we're going to be successful as a Scrum team, as a self-organizing team, and truly reap all the benefits, that we have to let go of some of this perceived control we thought we had, which we never really had anyway, right? So it's a leap of faith, and we have to make sure we're all comfortable. And add to that, it's something that was mentioned a little earlier, failing fast, right? The ability to know that you can fail, and it's okay, right? That's encouraged because you're learning, and your maximum learning comes from your failures, not from your successes. So we need to make sure we create an environment that people are comfortable operating in that space and reinforcing it.
Can you, I guess the Nationwide guys, talk about your transition, how long it took, where you guys think you're at, where you think your practices are at from a maturity standpoint?
Start there. So I would say about 5 years ago, we started with a small pilot project. Actually, I take that back. Probably in 2004, or 2002, 2000 through 2003, I guess. We actually did a pilot project that was successful, but failed to change the culture nationwide. So literally, Agile was in and then out very quickly with that one project. Probably back in 2005, we decided to try it again, but we attempted to make it more sustainable. So we didn't want to tie it to a project, we wanted to tie it to our assets, our applications. So we started to build teams that were going to stay together beyond a project. What happened was we started to see teams become high-performing across many different projects. Defect and quality went down. or quality went up, defects went down. Let me just restate that. And next thing you know, we started to get attention. I actually had a team that ran out of work. The team was actually producing more code, getting through the requirements faster than the business could make budget changes and make decisions on moving more budget to the team or more projects to the team. So once we started to see the value of the team concept, not necessarily all the agile techniques, but the value of keeping the teams together, bringing the works to the team, all the projects to the teams, it started to grow. And where we're at today is we have 18 lines, we call them lines, they're agile development teams, within what we call our application development center. They're all agile lines. We're currently going through a process, which I'm leading up, which is we're attempting to take all of our agile practices and assess them via CMMI. So we're going to be inspected by a DoD CMMI inspector on all of our agile practices. So we're attempting to grow very quickly this idea of the team concept, the development, the build concept being together for a long period of time. Does that kind of answer the question?
Yeah, what's your goal with CMMI evaluation?
The goal is really to, we want to be a world-class IT operation. So the goal is to kind of have an external assessment of our practices, right, and our processes. So we want someone to come in and say, you know what, you're doing the right thing. It's not for monetary gain. We're not going to go for DoD contracts or anything like that. But we're doing it at such large scale. We want to make sure that we have a third-party assessor taking a look at what we're doing.
So just a different aspect of this. As Dustin mentioned, we have about 18 teams doing Agile. And those are in various states of maturity, that is skill level. They're across Java stack, which is our biggest. We're trying to introduce it in COBOL, and that is pretty immature at this point, and some other miscellaneous technologies. But in general, we see a strong embracing of those folks working on the team and with our business partners who participate in the team room. Definitely a desire to learn, educate themselves, pick up things like test-driven development, moving towards acceptance-driven development, certainly have test automation around some acceptance-driven development, pairing, continuous integration, the Scrum practices with daily standards, et cetera. So there's a lot of embracing of that, a lot of support because they do it and they see that it works and it feels right, better than anything they've done before. What the next level is those people who've never done it, essentially the leaders of the organization, okay? They see that it's working and we have support, permission to do that. But I think the real next level of understanding has to come from as those people who've done it move into those ranks. Most of the people that are in those ranks have been doing waterfall or traditional project management all their life, and they have that model and understanding of the way software gets developed. They see this other thing and they're paying attention to it, and we've been blessed because we have enough wisdom that they've supported what we're doing. But really to understand it and to live it and to know what it means to support a team and to empower a team has to come from people who've actually done it. And I see that that's going to be a longer transition.
Our big issue that we have is our business is all in favor of incremental builds and delivery like that. How are you handling, okay, when will this project be done so those resources can shift on to the next project? And reducing the upfront planning, how do you still provide that information, those estimates?
So I'll be the first to speak up and say that's one we have yet to solve, I think, because we tend to look at projects still with the grouping of delivering all the story cards or all the requirements. And what we really need to do is look at when have we delivered enough value, right? So there could be 20 story cards that don't get played because they don't really deliver incremental value to the business, not based on the cost.